In the heart of Europe, Germany stands at a pivotal moment. On February 23, 2025, millions will head to the polls in a snap election that could redefine the nation's future and its role in a turbulent world. Economic woes, migration tensions, and the shadow of global powers like Russia and the United States loom large. This is the story of Germany's fight for direction. The race for Chancellor pits familiar faces against rising challengers. Olaf Scholz, the incumbent from the center-left Social Democrats, clings to power after his coalition collapsed in chaos. Friedrich Merz, the conservative titan of the CDU-CSU alliance, surges ahead, promising strength and renewal.
Let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And the worst can be that we Europeans must now finally and definitively take the security of our European continent into our own hands, because the security guarantees of the Americans are no longer guaranteed.
Robert Habeck of the Greens fights for a progressive vision, while Alice Weidel's far-right AfD and Sarah Wagenknecht's new BSW party stir the fringes, testing Germany's political norms. Polls tell a stark tale. According to INSA's latest survey from February 7th to 10, Merz's CDU-CSU leads with 30% of the vote, a number echoed by Forschungsgruppe Wahlen's February 2nd, 4 poll at 30% and climbing to 32% in Allensbach's January 31st. February 12th data. That's a commanding edge, reflecting a public hungry for change. The AfD trails in second, polling at 22% in INSA's numbers and 20% per Forschungsgruppe Wahlen, a sign of their growing clout, especially in the East, despite being shunned by coalition partners. Scholz's SPD sits at a shaky 15 to 16%, per INSA and YouGov's mid-January figures, a steep fall from their 2021 win. The Greens hover at 13 to 15%, per INSA and Forschungsgruppe Wahlen, while Wagenknecht's BSW teeters at 4 to 6%, flirting with the 5% threshold to enter parliament. Sentiment favors Merz as a decisive leader, yet his reliance on AfD votes for migration policies has sparked unease. What's driving this election? Germany's economy, once Europe's powerhouse, has shrunk for 2 years running. High energy costs, a faltering auto industry and declining exports to China have voters restless. Housing shortages and rising living costs fuel frustration, with optimism plummeting from 42% in 2023 to just 27% last year. Then there's migration. Violent attacks linked to immigrants, like those in Mannheim and Solingen, have ignited a fierce debate. The CDU and AfD demand tighter borders, while the SPD and Greens push for balance and integration. It's a fault line splitting the nation.
Perhaps, and if we could make a contribution, we could create focal points, i.e. rooms, halls, debates, speeches, invitations. But nobody forced you to come here tonight. Nobody forced the hundreds of thousands to take to the streets. There is no law for optimism, for civil courage and backbone. This is happening from the depths of the country's soul.
Across the border, the war in Ukraine tests Germany's resolve. Scholz backs Kyiv with billions in aid, but hesitates on long-range missiles, earning both praise for caution and scorn for weakness. Merz and Habeck call for bolder support, while AfD and BSW demand peace talks with Russia, views that echo in Moscow.
We will say very clearly with us, there will be no financial aid to war zones, no financial aid to Ukraine. There will also be no more arms deliveries to war zones.
Keine deutschen Waffen dort, wo Krieg ist.
No German weapons where there is war. We will enable the Bundeswehr to defend our country. And we will tell our partners very clearly that we Germans have German interests and that we will only represent national German interests.
We were among those who have been campaigning for years for the Ukraine war to finally be ended through negotiations. And for that we were always labeled as close to Putin and as the voice of the Kremlin and as I know what. And it was either claimed that Putin doesn't want to negotiate, or it was claimed that you can't negotiate with Putin because it rewards them. And that is why Ukraine must win. They've been telling us that for 3 years now. And what is the result? The result is that Ukraine is largely destroyed.
Why is Olaf Scholz on the ropes? His traffic light coalition, SPD, Greens and the Free Democrats, fell apart in November 2024 after bitter budget fights. Firing his finance minister was the final blow. Economic stagnation and a cautious stance on Ukraine have tarnished his image, leaving the once surprise victor of 2021 struggling to rally support.
I go by what you said at the beginning and what has already been discussed here. Many people are very undecided. I am convinced that this time there will be something that has rarely happened to this extent in previous elections, namely that some people will go to the election, into the polling booth, and only then decide who and which party to vote for. And I believe that in the end, many will vote for the SPD and give me a new mandate to lead the next government.
Europe and the world watch closely. On migration, Scholz seeks EU deals for returns, while Merz eyes permanent border controls. The Greens dream of a federal Europe. AfD wants out entirely. Ukraine divides them further. Billions in aid from the mainstream, rejection from the fringes. And with Donald Trump back in the White House, Germany braces for tariffs and NATO tensions.
I see a threat to our democracy. And again, look at America, one of the mother countries of democracy, where we've always believed that sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, sometimes they go on a, say, rampage, but at some point, they will always keep their democracy in the political center. That is, more in question today than ever, and that makes it all the more important that we maintain this stability, this political stability in Europe and in Germany. And you have all that in your hands next Sunday.
Relations with Russia and the US sharpen the stakes. Scholz treads carefully with Putin, balancing sanctions with dialogue. Merz and Habeck take a harder line, while AfD and BSW cozy up to Moscow's orbit. Facing Trump, Scholz and the Greens warn of trade wars. Merz seeks pragmatic deals, and AfD cheers his disruptive style.
We at the Alternative for Germany have noticed that the relationship towards our neighbors has deteriorated, first and foremost with Hungary, but also with our old partners, the great powers of Russia and China. My primary goal is to repair and improve these relationships.
As Election Day nears, Germany's choice is about more than a chancellor. It's about reviving an economy, securing borders, and navigating a world where allies like the US and foes like Russia test Europe's anchor. Will it be Merz's steady hand, Scholz's resilience, or an unexpected twist from the margins?
I am not campaigning for a miracle, but for a democratic election in which the outcome will be different from what you are making it to be.
On February 23, 2025, the votes will decide. In a nation at the crossroads, the future of Germany and Europe hangs in the balance. This is democracy in action, raw and unscripted.